belong, you can't perform. They stopped that. Within 5 years, the black students' performance on statewide exams doubled. The Latinos more than doubled. And the whites went up about 5%. So that's one example. I can give you many, but let me give you just two more really quickly. I talked about stereotype threat, and it's a little bit of a complicated subject on the cusp of time. The stereotype threat is basically where your identity is threatened, either because you feel like you don't belong, and there's some negative assumption with your identity. And there's many examples. All of us have identities that can be threatened. So this first test was done at Stanford around women, Asian American women, and the professor went in and said, I love teaching here at Stanford because there's so many bright women. And then 20 minutes later, he gave them a math test, and they didn't perform well. From the same group, the second test, he said, I love teaching here at Stanford because there's so many bright Asian American women. Now they performed exceedingly well. They had exactly the same ability. And what that's described is a stereotype threat. That we know in our society that women are not supposed to be good at math. So when he emphasized their womanness and then gave them a math test, he actually increased the stress in their body and affected their performance. We also know in our society there's a stereotype that Asian Americans do perform well in math. So when he emphasized their Asian Americanness, they perform well. Since then, that has been done in relationship to race. So for example, if you give a test, and before you give the test, you have the students check their race. Students and Latino students, you just depress their performance on the test. Because they are aware that blacks and Latinos are not supposed to be good at standardized tests. So you say, I want to remind you that you're black, remind you that you're Asian, now go take a standardized test. Their performance actually drops. You can turn that around very easily. Every school district should be doing it. What we're trying to get some of the testing bureaus to do is collect the demographic data after the test is done. And some are doing that. We've actually closed the gap on the MCAT exam, the medical exam, by changing stereotype. So there's all these things. So yes, there are all these examples that can be done. Unfortunately, too many of them are still within the academy, and people outside the academy don't know about it.
Thank you. Commissioner McKeel? Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm very happy that you could be here with us today, that you left your book for a moment to come and join us. This is just fascinating. To me, a couple of things you said that you talked about, I've written a lot of what you talked about, but and this probably goes a little bit in conjunction with Commissioner Bailey's question as well, but you talked about systems thinking and a place to belong. And so as he asked, are there places that are really doing this well that we can look to? I guess that would be my question.
Sure. Yes, there are. And there, for example, there are, even among police, unfortunately for many communities of color, the contact with government is through the police, and oftentimes is negative or perceived as negative. I'll give you two quick examples. In the Oakland School District, we work with the mayor there. They have police in the schools. Police were in the schools in uniforms, and they were changing the culture of the school because the students were seeing that they were coming to school to be police, not to learn. Now, there were some issues around safety in the school, both real and perceived. But having the police in schools, especially in full regalia, remember the police here, we want to be safe, was actually sending a message. So we actually got them to take the police out of uniform. And they were still in the schools, and actually have a relationship with the students. So what are the students there for? They're there to learn, they're there to actually strengthen their bodies. So we actually had the police actually help in terms of coaching. And so there started to be a relationship between the police and the students. Now, interestingly enough, the major reason for this was to actually decrease the level of stress in the students, but also it was to help the police have an empathetic relationship with the students, because they didn't know the students. They perceived the students as, because whatever they saw the students, they were in trouble. And so they didn't have a relationship where they knew the students as people. This actually changed the relationship and perception both from the police side and from the community side. And issues of violence and crime went down. Again, a relatively small thing. It didn't take any new money, but it talked about creating an environment where, because if you walk into a place, many black students, if they walk into a place and see police, they don't feel safe. They immediately feel like they do not belong. I did a survey on college students, black students, to see how many males would call the police if they got in trouble. Virtually none said they would call the police. Because they don't feel like the police will be coming there for them. So how do we change that? So that's one example. Just staying on that topic for a minute, there's actually dozens of police departments around the country that have figured out how to actually affirmatively make immigrant population feel
What kind of camera is that?
and we're trying to make that a national program. But there are things we can do to say you don't belong. Probably the most extreme example is Arizona. Or to say that you do belong. Yes, this is your place. We want you to feel safe. Talk to us. So there are very concrete examples all around the country. Once we decide how important it is for people to feel like they belong.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's a perfect message to end this conversation on, is how do we,
Is it water resistant?
as a community, make sure that everyone feels like they belong. And we know that that's directly related to the health and well-being of all of our residents, and especially appropriate with all the folks that we have in the audience today. So I know that this is really wonderful timing for you to come. Our community needs to hear what you have to say, and we really appreciate you coming.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I got a T5 right here. The cops took a T3 from me.
All right, I know we have a lot of folks in here, and we want to hear everyone's comments who've signed up to testify this morning. So I'm going to ask that people keep their comments to the time that's limited. We have lights flashed over here. How many people do we have? 18, okay. We have 3 minutes public testimony per person, and if you please stick to the time so that we can get everyone through. First of all, I'm going to ask for a motion on the consent calendar. Second. Commissioner McKeel moves, Commissioner Smith seconds. Approval of the consent calendar. All in favor, vote aye. Aye. The consent calendar is approved. We will now recess as the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners and convene as the Multnomah County Library District. May I have a motion on the Library District's consent? So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Smith moves, Commissioner Bailey seconds. Approval of the Library District's consent calendar. All in favor, vote aye. Aye. The Library District's consent calendar is approved. We will now adjourn as the Multnomah County Library District and reconvene as the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners, and we will hear public testimony.
I would ask that you please mute your cell phones. They do interfere with the microphones. We want to be able to hear your testimony. Thank you. Public comment, opportunity for public comment on non-agenda matters. Testimony limited to 3 minutes per person. This is a time for the board to hear public testimony, not for board deliberation. When I call your name, please come forward. I will call 4 at a time. Paul Adolph Phillips, Amy Anderson, Like Name Watchdog, and Matthew Charles Cardinal.
Good morning, Mr. Phillips. You can begin.
Yes, I'm Paul Phillips, and I spoke here April 24th and the 31st about notice to enter apartment, and this is the same subject as the 2 previous meetings. And I failed to explain that the notices that I was getting to repair the flood damage that was caused from a sprinkler being broken in the building, I failed to explain that there was 18 days of inspections notices that I supplied here, and I said that it was a 2-month period, but actually it was from February 28th to April 1st, which is 31 days for March, and then the 2 days in February, that's 33 and 34 days, and there was 18 days again, as I had supplied to the court clerk the 2 previous meetings. 18 days, I was expecting them to start paying on the rent, because that's more than half the days of the month, the 33 days that I was saying, that the 18 would be 36 if it was half, but it wasn't. And anybody would be aggravated, but this has been going on for years, where I've lived there. It'll be 12 years this December 3rd. And they have inspections, Home Forward does. In my building, somewhere around 20 to 30 inspections a year. They'll have an inspection for water sprinklers to see that they're not leaking. Then another inspection for the electrical plug-ins. And then another inspection for the drains of the building. And then another inspection for water leakage, the valves and toilet doesn't flush or things like that. An inspection for the fire alarm. This goes on every year. And that isn't just the end of the inspections. I'm saying that there's also inspections for any cracked windows. I'm saying different days of the year. And so I think that anybody that rents from Home Forward could validate that kind of inspections, unless they're just doing it in my building. They also, with the mental health people, they, as I said, 3 of them have jumped out of the building. I can understand why now, with all that kind of stuff going on. 3 of them have jumped out that I've heard of since the building was built in 1999. 2 of them that I know of jumped out. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. The presentation from the